All right, and we're
Is that your
here.
intro video? Is that your
Yeah,
intro video?
that's it.
I
That's all
like it. I
me,
like it.
dude.
It
That's.
works.
Could you tell
It
it was
works.
me?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of like I can, but either way, it's a good fucking intro video. It definitely sticks in the brain.
So my YouTube name used to be Who is Sky Daddy, and so that's like why it ends like that. But I decided to change the name to be just more, I don't know, embracing of people who don't like the term Sky Daddy and stuff. But I feel like the song still fits.
It does.
Anyway, yeah, appreciate you coming.
It does.
Unfortunately, last time, I don't know for anybody listening, we had a whole ass conversation last week, and at the very end, we recognized our sound wasn't working, and it was a whole ordeal. But I appreciate you coming back. It means a lot to me. Do you want to like introduce however you want to introduce yourself and let people know what you're about?
Yeah. Internet handle Space Apache. Uh, it's been an internet handle for a few years now, but either way, like in real life, uh, I'm a lot of things, so the list would be pretty long. But I guess the biggest issues about me personally: cult survivor, veteran, former private military contractor, uh, currently law enforcement, SRT, gang investigator, narcotics investigator. Uh, done a lot of crazy stuff in my life. Didn't wasn't the best kid in the world. Survived a lot of crazy shit, and it shaped the way I view the world. As a result, I've become a person who is incredibly what I call realistic. I try to view the world as it really is, for all the harshness and beauty that it contains. And in that harshness, I found a lot of beauty. Like an environment that's constantly trying to kill you has a beauty that is hard to describe. Like I love the desert, for example, jungle environments in the desert. Uh, there's something about that really, really harsh environment that is just stunningly beautiful, and it really makes you feel alive when you realize that everything around you wants you dead, right? And that's the way life. I don't know. I think there's something to be valued there, and I think if you, as a person, if you go through a lot of trauma, I think there is maybe this might be a helpful way to view the world, to take some appreciation and just accept it as it is. But that's pretty much me. Okay.
So, um, I agree with you on the tragedy, the beautiful tragedy of life, right? This is like a huge aspect to like ancient tragedy poetry and stuff like that is kind of like getting at the same thing. Is like beautiful is related to what is tragic essentially. So, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm curious, and if you don't want to like get all into your past and whatnot and do like interviewee type stuff, just let me know. We can get into whatever. But
Doesn't matter to me.
yeah,
Doesn't
I'm
matter to
I'm
me at all.
super curious what this cult thing is and what you
Oh,
survived here.
so it was an independent Pentecostal cult. Broke off from, if anybody Googles it, the Gospel Assembly series of churches under this guy that used to be called Brother Jolly back in the day. I got to spruce up for this interview, polish my teeth, because it just ate.
Yeah, you're good.
Mm. What happens when you eat Chick-fil-A? It gets in your fucking beard and shit. So, either way, a long time ago, this guy, well, basically at the turn of the 20th century, roughly, this cult got started. It ended with this guy. Well, not really ended, as far as I know, it's still going. Probably the most prominent leader was this guy called Brother Jolly. He was, they're very much independent Pentecostals. They teach some extreme shit, like end of the world, fire, death, hell, and brimstone shit. Incredibly restrictive. And that wasn't restrictive enough, right? Like, so a member of them, who became our cult leader, broke off and started his own thing under the same thing, and basically became even more extreme. Like the cult we grew up in, me and my brother grew up in, you couldn't, for example, traditional Pentecostal stuff, short hair, no beards, women with dresses and yada yada. But they even went more extreme. You couldn't date, you couldn't buy a car, buy a house, go on vacation without approval from the minister. Um, you couldn't really do anything. My parents, it was incredibly restrictive. Like you couldn't even date. Like there was no such thing as dating. There was only courting. You had to be married to the church.
Damn.
And probably the most damaging aspect of it is that if you leave the church, you're dead to the family. That means they treat you like you're dead. They never interact with you ever again. And this basically forces people to stay because also social interaction outside the church is banned. So you don't go to like festivals or events. We didn't have TV, internet, or music that wasn't produced by the church, right? So as a result, just lack of exposure to the outside world. And you're like, well, you can go out into the world or you can stay here with everybody you know. Most people choose to stay.
Yeah.
And the people who got into it was our parents. Our parents got into it because they had, being from where I'm from Mississippi, my family has a long history of criminality, and because that's how we survived for the past literally 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, we've been all kinds of crazy stuff. But long story short, my parents were just trying to make a better life, which they genuinely thought they were. Both of them thought they needed God. Both of them had issues. They thought they needed God. They were trying to be good people. They come across this church. Everybody in the church seems to be good people. Um, they kind of overreacted to their previous lives. You know what I mean? Overcompensated. And the thing about cults is they're not going to tell you they're a cult, right? It's very open. Like, just do as you wish. We'll be here for you. And then eventually you just keep doing more and more stuff with them. And then they become your life. And then they use social pressure to keep you there.
Yeah.
And this went on until I was about 16. It got really bad. I had 2 suicide attempts before I was 16. My brother had one. It was really bad. And my dad, about the time we became like 14, 15 years old, my dad had already largely turned against the church, but he didn't know how to get out of it at the time because my mom was still very much dedicated. So he didn't want to break up the family. He also didn't want to leave. And he was a deacon in the church by that time. And he realized what was going on with it. So basically, he tried to tear it apart from the inside, which ended effectively. Eventually, essentially the minister did it to himself, but my pops definitely helped. Eventually, he helped bring down the whole thing, and this particular cult leader lost both his churches and everybody involved. And I guess he kind of redeemed himself in that way, right? In a lot of ways, like he brought the system down or helped bring it down.
Yeah.
And after that, just like normal life, and it's really bad. It's really hard. I'll end with this. It's really hard to adjust to normal life. After being high, like the 90s do not exist for me and my brother. The 90s and early 2000s do not exist. Even though we lived in them, we did not live in them with the rest of the world, right? They do not exist as far as we're concerned. We read about it like a history, even though we were alive during that time. It's very hard to adjust back to the world. And the people who adjusted and who have to adjust back were a bunch of fucking drug using metalheads, right?
Yeah.
And hanging out with basically inner city thugs, rich white boys who didn't want to be rich white boys, and fucking just drug users from both environments, hanging out, liking music. And these people welcomed us better than normal citizens did. Regular people looked at us like we were freaks. These people looked at us like we were, oh yeah, you're broken like us. Let's hang out.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't have been for those people, like it might have been really bad because both of us were in a pretty bad psychological state at the time.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, like it's interesting. You look at a lot of music movements and like cultural movements, like you said, metal. There's like emo and punk and shit. A lot of this, at least from my experience, did stem from pretty aggressive, like getting raised pretty aggressively in a religion first, and sort of pushing you into this mode of rebellion or emo shit, right? Whatever kind of phase you go into, and the drug use is part of that as well. But the thing about it is, like, the communities themselves are very welcoming. It is like, it's the whole misfit thing. It's like, nobody's correct
Absolutely.
here, so everybody's welcome type of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those wild things. Like, I had some of the best times of my life there. Those people, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for people like that. They're not bad people. They're trying. Like, I think they're deeply misunderstood by a lot of society. I think we have more understanding these days because people are getting educated about like psychology and shit. But a lot of times these people are still relatively misunderstood. Like,
Yeah.
and some of them, like out of that friend group, most of them are dead now for a variety of reasons, either getting shot. And bad thing about it is, except for the rich kid, like everybody was trying to escape poverty, and so, and this influenced me later in my job I'm in now. But nobody wakes. Well, some of them ended up dead, getting shot. A couple of them overdosed. Some of them were murdered by family members, and you end up. A couple of them ended up just in like really bad addicts. And the thing about it is, addiction and drugs is one of my major things that I care about, because I'm not going to go into it, but nobody wakes up saying I want to be a crackhead, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Like, you become a crackhead due to a variety of other reasons. Like, nobody's like, yeah, can't wait to be a crackhead, bro. Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Well,
Like, and I think the way we treat drugs, and even though I'm a narcotics officer and stuff, the way we treat drugs is absolutely abominable.
yeah.
And part of the reason I don't mind doing this job. I know I'm hurting people. Some of them that don't deserve it. Mostly we do gang stuff. So, like, there's a difference when it comes to gangs, in my opinion. You picked up a gun, I picked up a gun. It's a game, right? Sometimes we'll snatch up other people in the process. I don't like it, but the way I look at it is I'm gaining experience, because if I ever do go for public office or anything, I want to be able to suggest policy for the drug war and not have it based on some far left ideology from somebody who doesn't understand reality, or for some far right wing nut job who believes they're all fucking go to hell. Fuck them all. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there needs to be a realistic approach.
Yeah, drugs is a hard one, I think, because I mean, there's a reason why our media is like, no big deal really for the white businessman going to Wall Street doing coke with all these women, right? Like, that's cool, that's exciting, like, but then the crack drug addict, it, like, on the street, the one doing crack on the street, this is like bad, poverty, send him to jail. Like, there's just a difference in class when it comes to drugs, and people get treated differently depending on their class. The drug itself, crack, right? Like, it's literally cocaine just made cheaper, and it's less healthy.
Some other stuff added, yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's just, I feel like class is a huge part, even of drug use itself. You mentioned a lot of these people you rolled around with were trying to escape poverty and stuff, and there's kind of this, no one just desires to be a crackhead right out the gate. Like, there's some type of pressure that's like compelling them to go that direction. But and this is where I struggle a little bit with, like, I understand your position as an officer and everything else, and your goals, what you're doing, but I struggle a little bit with I guess just the idea of being a narcotics officer, but also recognizing how like this is basically class warfare. I don't know. What do you think about
that? As a pragmatist or a realist, whatever you want to fucking call me, some people just gotta die. Like, that's the reality of the world. Some people just gotta die. We can't save everybody. Sometimes in order to save more people, you have to hurt people in the short term. That's not great, and people are gonna hate me for that opinion or whatever, but it's reality. Like, we do it every fucking day. The people that hate me, you're sitting here on a goddamn cell phone or a laptop that was produced most likely with lithium from a fucking 15-year-old African kid dying in a fucking mine somewhere. The people listening to this who would judge me, you're perfectly fucking willing to let other people die for your benefit. You do it every day. The difference is I do it with my own bare hands, and they do it from a distance. Okay? We all do it. Yep. Now, the difference is what's the end goal? My end goal is to eventually hope to end this system. All right? Their end goal, well, not everybody, but obviously there's a lot of people whose end goal is like passivity. They don't fucking care. As long as they don't have to see the blood or hear the people screaming, they don't give a fuck. Or they say they give a fuck. Maybe they post about it on Facebook, but they don't actually do anything. Mm-hmm. I want to do something in the future. And I'm working actively toward that. So fuck them.
Yeah. And I would say that I agree with pretty much everything you said. Which is why I'm not full ACAB as well, right? Like, I'm not full anything. Like, I feel like once you start getting into these absolutist categories, you're in trouble, right? You got to be flexible to your environment and what's going on. But I would say same thing for, like, these middle class, like, white people on their phone. It's not just white people, but that's just the easiest way to describe it. But I would almost say that they're in the same camp as that crack addict, in the sense that I don't think they really came out the gates of like, oh, I just want to spend my life rotting in front of a TV and going to work
Yeah,
every day. And
of course they did. No.
but we sort of get caught up in this class system that's designed to like kind of keep us in separate categories. And the TV's comfortable, our phone's comfortable, we get lost in it, just like the crack addict.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. Nobody wants to be a passive piece of shit. They just end up being a passive piece of shit because society forces them to be a passive piece of shit. Like, it is what it is. That's just the reality. And, man, it's harsh. Very few people are like, I want to be the bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Very few people are like that. They may accept themselves as the bad guy, but they don't. Very few people are like, yeah, I just want to be an evil person.
Yeah.
Maybe a few billionaires. And by the way, funny what you said about crack. I have legitimately watched a billionaire smoke crack from a fucking can. Yes.
Wow. What's the point of a billionaire not? Yeah, why wouldn't you just get the purest shit at that point? That doesn't even make sense.
He said the crack hits faster and lasts longer. I'm like, okay. Like, this is a dude worth $1 billion smoking crack from a fucking Coke can. Okay? Like, it's wild.
That is.
These people at top of society, the only difference between them and a crackhead on the street is they have money for fucking rehab and to dress up their addiction. That's it.
And they have money for the court system, right? So, yeah, and this reminds me a little bit of what you said something last year. Oh, shit. Oh, my light just went off. Whatever. Last week you were saying that basically whenever someone thinks they're a good person, right, that ultimately can just justify any bad shit because you think you're in the good. So it just reminded me of that because you were saying how... sorry, that light really threw me off for a second.
You're good, bro. You threw me off too. Shit.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, so like nobody is dying to be the bad guy, right? In my opinion, most people end up being the bad guy because they actually think they're the good guy, which is why it reminded me of you saying that. So I wanted to ask, like, do you think that your experience with the cult, the way you were raised in that cult, sort of determines your outlook on this idea of like, you hate anyone who thinks they're good? Not hate, I shouldn't say hate, but like you hate this idea of someone thinking they're in the moral good or having God on their side or whatever else. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that definitely influenced it. Every one of those people in that church, molesting kids, stealing money, laundering money, involved in everything they were involved in, every one of them said they were a good person. Every one of them justified. I think when you start saying I'm a good person, that's some sinus pressure. So when you say you're a good person, by good person, logically, anything a good person does is good. That's why they're a good person. And I think that a lot of people, they come to this, they want to believe they're a good person, and most people want to see themselves as a good guy, and everybody engages in some degree of justification. And I do it too. Trust me, I do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the difference really comes down to self-awareness. You have to be self-aware. If you're not self-aware, I think you're going to make some major mistakes. And anybody who, like I said, anybody says they're good, I believe that like they begin to justify everything they do, because if a good person is good, because what they do is good, so what I'm doing is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It follows. It always follows. So I've had people sit in front of me and tell you I'm a monster, right? And they are some of the people I would rather deal with. I've had people sit in front of me and tell me I'm a monster, and they legitimately were monstrous individuals, right? I've had a contact with all types of humanity doing what I do, and the ones I am most wary of are always the ones who tell me they're good people. That's, like, it's like a nice guy. You know the nice guy thing? Everybody's aware of that now. The nice guy. I'm a good person is the same equivalent to me as the saying I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay? That is a red flag for me immediately. Most of the time.
Well, and it kind of goes into that absolutism type of thinking again, right? Because I think you can consider yourself to be decent and trying to be good, right? But it's when you get into that camp of like, no, like I am the best person here for the, like, I am the leader of the church, like I have God on my side, like all of these things to justify anything you want, essentially. And especially if you view morality as some type of divine command, if you think that you're in contact to the divinity itself, then it's basically you commanding whatever your desires are. And by the way, which is why I think the reason there's so much sexual repression in a lot of religions is because it's related to this cult leader mentality of gaining all of the like virgins or the sex for yourself. You're like repressing people's natural way of being so that you can sort of occupy that and take it over yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It also serves sexually frustrated people to look for an opportunity to release that sex, and then when they're given permission to release it by a leadership figure, they tend to. And there was a point in the church where the minister told the men not to have sex with their wives because you should only have sex for procreation.
Right.
Luckily, my dad didn't do that. I know my dad. That motherfucker didn't follow that shit. But a lot of the other men did, and then surprise, surprise, the minister ended up fucking their wives.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's because what happened. And by the way, this minister had like a master's degree in psychology back in like the 80s, 90s, and 70s, back when nobody knew shit about psychology. They weren't educated like people are today about psychology, right? He had a master's degree in it, so he knew how to manipulate people. He was naturally charismatic. And so, yeah, he understood the psychology of that. You sexually repress people, their sexual tension builds, right? And then they're given permission to release that sexual tension by the guy they see as a link to God.
Exactly.
So if God wants it, it must be good, which threw me into this wild thing. So I won't name her, but there was a girl in our church I grew up with, right? I used to have a big crush on her. And after the church, she ends up, apparently as the church was falling apart, she was reaching mid-teens. And her best friend used to invite her over to her house. It was after the church fell apart, she got invited over to this girl's house. And this girl's dad was also a minister, right? And I'm pretty sure it started before she was 18, but this guy was like in his 30s. And like, this is why I have some weird views on like how we do. Some people are predatory from an early age. Let's put it that way. Some people are just predatory from an early age. And doing law enforcement, I have witnessed people who were just, when they were 12, they were predators, right? They were born to be predatory. And she's one of them. All right. She's just one of them. This girl grew up in a church where there was no allowed sexual contact, yada, yada. But when she was like 16 or whatever, she started going over to this friend's house. And this is after the church fell apart, and washing this dude's feet. That was one of the things. She had service to God was to wash his feet, right? And later her friend recounted how basically she should have realized that from the time she was 16 to 18, this girl was basically hitting on her dad, right? And then a few weeks after her 18th birthday, apparently his wife got a text message to come to, well, I heard it, come to the church, to the thing. And his wife catches him and her in bed together, essentially. And then of course, he divorces his wife. They end up getting married. And I remember she posted on Facebook, it is God's will. If God had not willed it, we would not be together. Yep. And she goes, I am a good person. If God had not, she said, I am a good, God-fearing person. If God had not willed it, we would not be together. And that just drives that is insane.
Well, and that's another aspect of it too. The whole like having divinity on your side is, the thing is, we're all subject to fate. I'm not saying fate as in this was all predetermined and all pre-planned, but none of us can like rewind the clock and change things. But when you have divinity on your side, right, you start saying, well, this is how fate was supposed to be. But fate is like actually a really good tool for like just dealing with any circumstances you're up against, right? Like, this is another Nietzschean thing. I don't know if you said you like read him or just sort of looked up videos, but one of his basic messages is to love fate. Whatever she brings you, like death, destruction, love, beauty, whatever it's brought to you, you should just love it because you can't change it. And so I get frustrated at the hijacking of that idea to like, again, just justify your own actions. Like that's not really fate at that point. That's your actions as a willing being.
So I think that, so you know the term, God wills it. I think I like bar roughly translate to God wills it.
Something
to my knowledge.
Yeah.
There's the way I like to think about, there's an active, I have a personal belief in God, whatever. I don't force anybody, don't expect anybody to accept it. I don't form my worldview necessarily around it, but I do have a personal reason to believe. at a would never argue with anybody. I think it's pointless to argue it. But I think I thought about this. There's an active and passive voice when you say God wills it. It can be used in two ways. The active God wills it is if I do it to you, God willed it, right? I'm his messenger. I'm his act. He loves me. What I do to you is right because God willed it, right?
Yeah.
And the more passive form is where I think it's more psychologically helpful and probably just more realistic. Is when, like you said, bad things happen to you. You're like, God wills it. That's God wills it, right?
Exactly.
And this gives, like, believe it or not, the path. What you see among Islamists a lot is there is definitely the active use of the form, right? But there's a lot more of the passive use, right? And it allows them to have extreme, like, human beings with no care for their own survival, dedicated to a goal with everything in their heart, right, are insanely powerful. And that's part of the reason we lost in Afghanistan. Part of the reason we didn't succeed as much as we wanted to in Iraq. Part of the reason the Iraq-Iran war ended the way it did. In the Iraq-Iran war, there are accounts of women strapping bombs to themselves and their children as the Iraqis rolled toward them and walking hand in hand saying, God wills it, into the treads of fucking tanks. All right? That is a power that is almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
From a simple belief. And it's mind-blowing. It's fucking wild. And I think that's the difference. The people who say, God wills it because I did it, right? They tend to be significantly less powerful than the people who are like, God wills it because it happened, right? Because what's happening to me is part of this. And like those people who say God wills it because I do it tend to be the first ones to break and run, in my opinion. Like what I've witnessed in life, they tend to be the ones to break and run. The people who are like passively like God wills it tend to be the people who are standing at the end of the day, in my experience anyway.
You know, I just thought of this. I wasn't actually planning on going here with you, but I think it'll be a cool point of contention for us. Because you're very, like, I don't want to say aggressive, but you're very, like, put your foot forward, like, assert yourself onto the world, right? Like the Nietzschean idea, the will to power, like you want to do something, you want to gain power, change things for the better as you see it. And you sort of, it seems like you critique passivity quite a bit. And so for me, it's hard to put it, but essentially I operate with both mechanics. It's kind of like a Taoist type of framework, right? There's absence and there's presence, there's fullness, there's emptiness, and these things are connected. They don't exist without each other. And so I sort of operate on this idea of like, yes, I will to power, but also like sometimes being passive is the appropriate thing for my will to do.
Environmental. It's environmental demands. Environmental demand. You're absolutely correct. There are times to be when somebody dies and you can't prevent it. Like it's something that you can't change. You have to accept it. You have to be passive. Obviously there are limits to that, right? Like certain people died around me. I would not be passive about that at all. So I mean, obviously we all have a little bit of hypocrisy, and that's mine. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, it just depends on the situation. Sometimes you need to be passive about the things you can't control, in my opinion, and aggressive about the things you can control.
Well, I think I would take it a little bit further than just the sort of accepting fate thing. Even just asserting my will onto the world, I choose to be passive about sometimes. There are like certain
definitely.
things. Yeah. And so this for me, like, and we can get into values versus like honor system versus like a value system or whatever else. But at least for how I work with my values and my virtues or whatever else is practicing this restraint. Like I do recognize that I'm not always a good person. And so I have to actively restrain myself from putting my will onto the world, right?
I consider that self-awareness, and I can also call it picking your battles. When I was younger, I had like this burning in my heart, right? Like this, I could feel like I used to think of it as flames eating my soul, right? That's the way I've really felt inside. A lot of hatred, a lot of anger, a lot of rage. And it pushed me to do things that I shouldn't, that was unusual. Things survive stuff that probably shouldn't have survived. But at the end of the day, as you get older, I agree with you 100%. You begin to realize that that fire only burns so bright for so long, right? You either burn out and die, or you learn to manage it. And you only have so much energy. That fire only has so much energy. So if you apply it to everything and you fight everything and everybody you can, you're just going to lose. You're spreading yourself thin like a battlefield, right? You can't spread yourself too thin. You should focus on the things you can change 100%. Like,
Yeah.
there's lots of battles you can fight, and you might just choose not to. Absolutely. Like, I think that is perfectly rational and reasonable. 100% agreed.
The restraint part is, I think this is more. I think it's more than that, is what I'm getting at. The restraint part specifically is like, like, basically, I could just go get booze and drugs and like go pick fights all day. Like, I could assert my will that way, but I don't. But the reason I don't isn't always clear to me, I guess. It seems like there's just something that I believe that, like, this system transcends me, is beyond me to a degree, that I'm like pursuing a good path, quote, good. Like, I'm pursuing something better than what my innate sort of biological desires tell me to pursue.
So yeah, that's where we might disagree a little bit, but I don't. It's not disagreement like we're gonna intellectually fight over it. Disagreement about like maybe how we live things. I feel when you're doing that, this is probably some part of you telling you this is not what I'm about to do is not exactly beneficial. Um, I think we all have two or three voices in us. The one that actively wills, the one that calculates subconsciously is like, yo, you probably don't want to do that shit. And you maybe not even be aware of it, but maybe that's what's kicking in there, in my opinion. The thing that's calculating toward your end goals at whatever subconscious level, intuitive level. And then there's the voice in your head that craves just biological release of whatever we want to at the moment. And I think, I think that makes sense to me. I think that we obviously may do things quite a bit differently, but I think it's probably your innate voice, man. Your innate voice telling you, like, yo, like this long-term calculations tells this won't work out. So fuck off. That's what my opinion is. And besides, if we did that, I don't know, man. I've known people that did that, and it just tended not to end well. But here's an idea, by the way. Since the last time you and me talked, not here, but on Discord, yada yada. I have shifted my opinion on something you're probably definitely going to disagree with me on.
Let's hear it.
I have shifted from pro-choice to pro-life.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. Right. We might have to just fight about that the rest of the time.
Yeah. So, can I tell you why?
Yeah, please lay it out.
So we've talked about the birth rate issues in the world, yada yada. And I was very much of the mind that maybe we could shift this through policies like encouraging births through financial means, yada yada, because in America it primarily seems to be financial. But there's some new studies that were released that indicate that 55% of Gen Z Americans do not intend to have children at all. 55%. Of the remaining 45%, half of them plan to have one child. Half plan to have one child. These are extinction level birth rates. All right? Like, this is extinction level birth rates without some action. Okay? And I'm a pragmatist. And I'm a feminist, and I really honestly believe like a matriarchy would be better for the world, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because what you don't see in matriarchies is a lack of birth rates, by the way.
Exactly.
Matriarchies always have plenty of fucking kids.
Yep.
Because women generally want to have children, especially when they're in control of their own shit. But in this context, we can't do that right now. I really want to, and I think we can move toward that, but it's, we're going to be, that's going to be an uphill fight. And B, we don't have the time. And so I've come to the opinion that we should probably restrict abortions to 6 weeks or less. Now, I'm not like the Republicans. I'm not like and push them out and let them die, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, push them out, let that baby better work in the factory. Like, I'm not like that shit. So, in my opinion, we have plenty of funds available for this. We could cut back our military budget because it's out of fucking whack anyway. And if we don't have soldiers for the military, we're fucked anyway. Like, I don't care how robots are expensive and AI is expensive. Like, the good human flesh and blood and bone is still really fucking cheap. Like,
yeah. Yep.
And at the end of the day, just from a national security perspective, we need babies. And so I think if you did this, you restricted abortion rights and you passed a law that you will be punished if you engage in one. What you need to do at that point is you need to set up two systems. One system for the unwanted children that mothers won't want, right? That don't want to take care of them. Expand a government-funded, government-facilitated training program for the unwanted children. And B, the next thing you do is you have to pay for that woman's medical bills, total fucking coverage across the board. 2, pay for her if she chooses to keep the child. That child receives a stipend from the government, all right, every year, unless her income is too high. I know Republicans aren't a fan of that, but fuck you at this point. B, this is one that really pisses off even people especially people on the right, but even some people on the left. We should pay for reconstructive surgery. All right, if that woman has that child, it does a lot of damage to their body. I would facilitate up to $8,000 to $13,000 per woman for reconstructive surgery if she wants any after the birth of that child, whether it be weight loss, plastic surgery for the belly, repair that devastated vagina. Like, doesn't matter to me, right? Just like so much money to get your body back to what it was before because it's an extremely traumatic process.
Yep.
And then as far as the children and the facilities goes, well, guess what makes good soldiers? People with no families. Trauma and people with no families. Yeah. Like, let's be honest here. Like, unfortunately, that's the fucking
Sounds
truth.
Like you're coming from experience again.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like, these kids are gonna be angry, bro. They're gonna be fucking angry, man. Not gonna lie to you. My mama abandoned me and ended up in a government training facility. Fair enough. But what I would do is facilitate these kids with the goal of them becoming doing something for our government, right? Military, some type of service. It doesn't have to be military. It could be road work or construction or whatever they fucking want to do, right? And if they don't want to do that at the end of it, let them fucking go into the world of their own free will. But set it up so they have a continued government employment program after that. That's how I would handle it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot here. So just a couple of things to try and get out of the way if we can. So as a matter of defense, that seems to be one of your concerns. The other concern is just the extinction of humanity. Is that fair? Those two things?
Yeah, like from a national security perspective, I want to preserve the country, but secondly, just for no total humanity, this seems to be, if this is Gen Z in America, if this is Gen Z around the world,
right?
We're fucked. We're fucked.
Okay, so defense-wise first, if this is a global trend, then defense-wise, ultimately, are we really going to be getting invaded if other countries are dealing with the same thing?
That depends. Long term, at the end of the century, Africa will be the most populous continent on the planet. The majority of the human population will be African. All right, they will probably run the world, and that's not a bad thing. The issue is we can't predict what those nations will do. Right. So maybe they become more aggressive. Maybe they become more peaceful. We don't fucking know. Like, that's a century from now. Anything could happen. You know what I mean? Aliens could land, or there could be the ground could open up and demons crawl out. We don't fucking know what's going to happen. We can't predict how these nations will evolve, and they will likely be the most populous with a relatively young population, even at the end of the century, their current birth rate. Even though their current birth rate is in decline, they will they'll still be in decline, and eventually they will suffer the same fate as everybody else. It'll be about a century later, right? So for about a century, they will be peak, and we don't know how they'll develop. In the case of Russia, UK, France, Germany, Vietnam, China, we kind of know the rough trajectories and desires of these nations. We don't know what the new nations, the new power of the planet will do. So as far as defense is concerned, I don't think we'll be invaded, but there's a non-zero chance that we will.
Okay. So the extinction part is probably more important anyway. So I listened to debates about this shit all the time. Like, I'm too obsessed with it. It probably drives me mad. But so I'm hearing these arguments from right wing, basically fascists. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to like
Yeah, there's a
actually
lot of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it is like a global trend. These are true. This is true stuff. So it's like nothing I can deny about birth rates going down. However, what I'm always thinking when I listen to this stuff is, how have we determined how many people we need before we go extinct? Because to me, what it looks like societies as we've built them could definitely collapse with these birth rates dropping. Like, that's probably inevitable if the birth rates continue the way you're suggesting. But does that actually mean human
the studies are
societies?
suggesting, not me. The studies are suggesting.
Yeah. But does collapse of the societies we've built as we know it equal humans going extinct? Or will humans, as life does, sort of grab at the chance to live off the land and have more kids and start repopulating? In fact, as I'm not like a full Marxist or full communist. I call myself a pluralist progressive because I like taking principles from all of the systems that I read, like good principles from any system I can find. A lot of them are Marxist and stuff, but if the idea is to sort of have a stateless, moneyless society, would not the collapse of the society be good in progress toward that, in which pockets of communities can now just start regulating their own little communities, having kids? And I don't think this means humans go extinct, is what I'm getting at.
So, long term, it definitely does. So, there's recent studies, this is pretty accurate, it's not even really up for much debate, it's well accepted in the scientific community, that large mammalian life on Earth has at max about 1 million years. Okay? And people are like, who cares what happens in 1 million years? I can hear everybody and watches this like, who cares what happens in 1 million years, right? Well, reality is, I have a very long-term view of the world, the universe, yada yada. 1 million years is that, and the cosmic sense. 1 million years ain't shit. Basically, we have very limited amounts of time. B, before the sun cooks us, the surface of the planet, well enough to destroy all mammalian life, climate change will almost certainly have fundamentally altered the surface of our planet. Even if it's not in the short term, right? Even if it's like a few hundred years from now. And this whole birth rate thing will take place over the course of roughly 300 years, okay? And we're going to see the peak of human birth around 2050. And from there, we're going to see a decline. So and you look at it, factor Africa in, you got another century. And then after that, I guess something else will happen, probably take another century. I'm guessing 300 years. But at these birth rates, you can talk to doctors. You can watch some of Dr. Shauna Swan's takes on this and some other takes from people like Harvard, MIT. The reason we call these extinction level birth rates is because eventually you end up in somewhat of an extinction spiral where each generation has successively fewer children to the point that they can't repopulate. And I'll also remind you that if you said society would collapse and people go agrarian, this is true. I have a question for you. Do you know that the death rate of females from natural births throughout human history? How many of them die in childbirth?
I know it's high. Without like hospitals and medicine, yeah.
30 to 50%. All right. Now, what do you think that's going to be in the developed nations? Even most of the undeveloped nations like Vietnam, Korea, yada, yada. What do you think that's going to be then? Because there's another factor we haven't thought about, and this is C-sections. And you can actually find write-ups about this. C-sections have altered evolution. So we used to be the women with short hips and small vaginal canals were narrow hips and small vaginal canals would just die. Okay, unfortunately, that was the case. They'd bleed out and die, and it was rough. But it meant that women with larger hips and larger vaginal canals and yada, yada, everything to help them have a baby tended to survive and pass on their genes. We have circumvented this by doing C-sections. And I'm not against C-sections. Two of my kids were born with C-sections. So C-sections are fucking great, right? I don't want to lose my wife. But if society collapses, there's a very solid chance that the birth rate among females is going to be even higher. Okay? And when you're dealing with a population, we're only 45% of them are going to have a kid, right? And then half of those women at a minimum, that's the highest of the natural birth rates. And I'm assuming that after this evolutionary take will lose even more. When 50% or more die in childbirth with their first child, then we have a severe problem, okay, after societal collapse. And when this cuts down on the birth rate even more, which means the next generation suffers the same problems pretty rapidly. Maybe we could come out of the extinction spiral. We've been down to 35,000 humans before, but all of civilization will collapse at that point. All of civilization. And B, we can't get back into space. Satellites will degrade. Things will fall apart in space. You'll end up with a massive whipping ball of metal around the planet that would keep us from going into space for 10,000 years, possibly 10,000 years. There's a lot of models of that type of event. And then you're on top of that, like as people collapse and societies collapse, you've got like chemical storage facilities on waterways that will break and leak incredibly toxic materials. Lake Karachay in Russia might breach, almost certainly will at some point, with nuclear waste, and that will pour out into the Arctic Ocean, poisoning most of Europe. Like without proper human maintenance, the planet becomes toxic. And then even if we somehow survive all of that, our civilization has consumed so many fucking resources like oil that our future following generations, should society collapse, will likely not have the ability to extract enough energy to rebuild the society that we currently live in, which means that we'll probably be here, stuck here, when the sun cooks the surface of the planet in 1 million years, or climate change wipes us out in 500,000, right? We're fucked long term. And I think very, very long term in these contexts. And so I think all of that suffering and death is worth restricting personal freedoms for a little while. Hopefully for a little while.
So when it comes to the climate change point, do you agree that, like, I know climate change has its natural course without humans, but do you think that humans have exponentially added to the course of the changing climate? I would hope so.
Definitely.
Because you're a very scientific guy, yeah.
It definitely looks that way. I've heard some debate about it, but it definitely looks that fucking way.
Because I guess that, just this point alone, obviously all of this stuff's interdependent and connected and stuff, but if we could try to just look at that point alone as best as we can, right, that one seems like a double-edged sword to me, right? We keep mass producing people who keep needing to consume more resources and especially massive amounts of energy to get to space and stuff, right? Are we actually going to beat the sun before we cook the planet ourselves?
Fuck, no, that's the problem, man. You are absolutely fucking correct. I've thought about that too. My only answer, like, I'm not a guy with all the answers. I'm just a guy who views things a little bit longer range than most people. But I don't have these fucking answers. Yeah. In reality, the way I view it, we're very much in a race against time. So we have a few things that would change the course of this trajectory. We have the potential development of fusion technology that is coming along very, very well right now. But it could be 5 years away. It could be 50. We really don't know. Fusion is some weird shit. We have hot salt thorium reactors being built Chinese. And my opinion is, this is my personal opinion, so for the record, I said this in 2025, right? My personal opinion is that the Chinese will likely, once they have theirs up and operating, start building these hot salt thorium reactors across the planet for their allied nations, and then likely use this as a mechanism of control, because thorium cannot be used in nuclear weapons, and it's insanely cheap, and it's everywhere. All right? China has 60,000 years worth of thorium in its mineral deposits. So they could give thorium reactors to every allied nation and then be like, yo, don't do what we tell you to do. Lights off, right? Yeah. That's what I would do in their situation. I'm not going to lie to you. That's what I would do. Do what I want, or I'm going to turn your power off, right?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this, I think if we go down the hot salt thorium reactor and nuclear technology route, which we seem to be doing kind of, like until Trump took office and he cut a whole bunch of funding in that area, by the way, but we were developing like micro nuclear reactors, like Constellation Energy, by the way, have stock in them. Check Constellation Energy out, but they were doing like micro nuclear reactors and shit. I think that if we get the technology up and running fast enough, then, and we use like potentially like nanoparticles in the upper atmosphere to shield the planet, which is something that's been talked about by multiple organizations. If we use the right technology, we could sustain. You're right. We're fucked. We keep raising the population, we will face resource demands we cannot fulfill. But if the population falls like it currently is, we face extinction and collapse of society. And then like you said, it's very much going to be threading the needle.
Yeah.
But I think that if possible, if our technology advances fast enough, we can support more people. If we can support more people, we can keep the economy alive. We keep the economy alive, we can afford space travel. And once we have space travel, it opens up the economy, period. Like, we have an infinitely growing economy at that point, and space relatively infinite. And then B, um, we can support just more people. So hopefully, like, we'll have to thread the needle. But you're right; it's competing
Yeah.
interests, man. It's really like how, like, I don't know, man. It's hard to explain. It's a complex,
Well,
very
it's a
complex
double-edged
problem.
sword. That was kind of
Yeah.
my whole point, right? And so this is like, I might get a bit deeper here than you really, and kind of somewhat
Uh,
metaphysical or whatever else than I know you like to get, but it is, I think, practical to what we're trying to argue here, especially we're thinking very long-term time of the human species, sort of intersolar species, however far we make it into space, we're still having this race against time. Each sun will explode eventually, right? So if
yep.
you think that far into the future, inevitably the entire fucking universe is going, and we're probably going with it. Like, we're never going to infinitely
So you're
preserve the human experience is what I'm getting at, right?
I see. This is where yeah, it's going to come down to a very metaphysical idea. So have you ever read the story, The Shadow Line? It's a very unknown science fiction book. You ever heard of that
I
one?
haven't heard of it, no.
And there's a character in there named Gnosis, and Gnosis, or his name is not a coincidence. It actually, so either way,
Yeah.
Gnosis made at the beginning of the story. You know that Gnosis is going to die at the end. It's like a Greek tragedy, right? You know everybody dies. Him and his whole family, save one, are exterminated at the end of the story, and you know that from the beginning. And Gnosis makes a point to his son in the story. His son is writing this from perspective, like, after all the death. The surviving son is, I guess, the perspective of the story. And he recounts something his father tells him, and this has inspired me. I'm not going to lie. Uh, he said, "It is not our role to question that life's role is not to survive infinitely, but to fight against the void as long as it possibly can, to fight entropy till it's dead." And that's the way I view it. Like, then that philosophy is very dark. Like, everything I'm doing is fucking pointless. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because here's the little bit of hope here, right? As long as you're alive, there is some degree of hope. Maybe our children, a million years from now, or 200 million years from now, when we've evolved far beyond what humanity currently is, right? Maybe they'll find a way to do things like sidestep the heat death of the universe, right? Uh, there's so many possibilities. There's mathematically proven dimensions. There's so much possibility out here. So much about physics we don't currently understand. So much energy we have not consumed. There could be answers to those questions. You're in my role right now in 2025 is to do what the people before us did, and struggle tooth and nail, and eventually give our lives in the hope that our children have a chance to figure those problems out. That's all we
Yeah.
can do.
And I agree with you, like, almost to the full, like, leap, but I'm not quite jumping off the cliff of it, right? Because the whole point of bringing up the end of the universe is to say there is something here that humbles us. We know that we can't actually infinitely outrun time and the universe itself. Like, at some point there is something grander than us that like decides our fate, that we actually cannot outrun. And it's good to actually positively believe that we can continue to fight against it. I agree with you, because that's how we continue our civilizations and survive and everything else. But having that little, like, end of humbling, the knowledge of, we don't know everything, sort of, we're not good, like, kind of what we were talking about earlier, the knowledge that, like, yeah, we're not good, so we're trying to be good, kind of thing. Sorry, there's a lot of threads to tie here, because basically when I'm bringing up the double-edged sword, it reminds me of my dad, who is very much a, like, MAGA concern. He's like, we get into it all the time, okay?
Oh God.
And one thing that he always tells me about the 70s and the 80s is the climate change alarmists who told all of the Mormons here in Utah not to have babies because we're going to run out of water, and told them to basically stop populating, This is a crisis of climate, right? And
Hello?
oh, did you lose me? Where'd you lose me?
I lost you for about 5 seconds or 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I heard everything. I heard everything. You're good. It came through.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I basically conceded to him. I was like, look, the climate is changing. It's a problem. I agree with you that this alarmist rhetoric maybe caused us to overreact way too much and people stopped having babies. That's kind of a problem now. In the same way, I think that you're falling trap to the alarmist rhetoric of the birth rates. And I don't think it should sell us out to forcing people to get pregnant. I know you haven't fully gone to like we have to like
Not get pregnant.
yeah,
Get pregnant,
but
stay
but
pregnant.
your logical to push you to your logical consistency, you would have to bite that bullet, right? To say if women just
Eventually,
stopped
so
having sex,
allow me to address that. So if I think that the method that I propose could solve a lot of the problem. Also doing some other things, but I don't want to force. I don't want to force do breeding camps or anything.
Right.
Obviously, if it got to that extreme and it's the survival of the species versus that, I'm definitely going to pick that. Like that, I'm going to be completely honest with everybody. Survival of the species is top of my end goal.
Right.
I will sacrifice anybody or anything in order to achieve that. And I think that most people want to live. So I think but yeah, ideally, that's not where we are. I think that we are at the point where we could still engage in very reasonable encouragement.
Yeah, and I
Some
understand. I wasn't, which is why I wasn't like putting that on you. I was just saying that that kind of is the end result. If it's getting severe enough, that's where we're going, right?
So I view it like overcorrecting. You ever been in a car? You've seen somebody overcorrect. They see a mistake. They turn. They jerk back and they jerk back the other direction. I view their climate alarmism that you brought up as a severe overcorrection.
Right.
They swerved to miss they were going to have a birth problem. They were going to have a resource problem. But we solved it with technology, right?
Yeah.
And they swerved to avoid that problem, and they way overcorrected, and now we're in a tailspin. And this isn't like the 70s, where this is pretty hard data from MIT and Harvard with much more advanced technology that at this point we're kind of fucked. It's going to be rough. And if it continues, we can only react with the information we have on hand. That's all I'm saying. We can only react with the information we have on hand.
And I understand there's a time element here that we're racing against, but I think my ultimate point to you is I think this abortion thing is inevitably an overcorrection. And I think that because it's going to make women just react themselves and be like, well, I'm in danger of not being able to take care of my own reproduction, so I'm just not going to have sex. And you see this with Gen Z already, by the way. It's not just that they're not having sex. They're not even just not having babies, they're just not having sex. So I think this abortion approach would probably just force more women into this camp of, well, fuck having sex then. I don't want to have a baby. And then now what? The pendulum's going to swing back again to the breeding camps.
This is where I would propose the much more intermediate approach, where while we may force you to carry a pregnancy to term, we would definitely provide for you and the child, and even above and beyond, to include reconstructive surgery. I think that would be less of an overcorrection, because I think it solves a lot of the core problems. Women do want to be in control of their own bodies, and you can't take somebody's freedom without giving them something in return. They just don't like that very well. And the return would be, we will pay you, basically, and believe you off hopefully better than before the pregnancy, in exchange for this alleviation of freedom. And it sucks.
Yeah.
It fucking sucks. I'm aware, it is. That's why I don't think it's an overcorrection, because I don't want to throw these people into the wolves.
Right.
But I am a pragmatist, and I think this is something that we've already witnessed. And it's one of those problems, and I think the major problem with this is it's one of those issues that by the time you're like, oh yeah, these people were right, you're dead. Either you're dead or society's doing great. You don't know, but there's a very solid chance that by the time you're like, oh yeah, those guys were right, the opportunity to make a decision has passed. it's one of those hard situations where you have to look at the future and be like, where do I think the future is going to go? Because if you don't make the decision now, the future could be very, very bad or decent, but or very, very bad. And it's like, I don't know, man. It's one of those really bad situations where you just have to make a decision with incorrect information, with incomplete information, based
Yeah.
on the best projections that you currently have, and hope to God it's not an overcorrection. And I'm not saying I'm right. Uh, I think anybody who sat here and tell you I think I'm 100% right on this is fucking lying to you. Nobody can
Exactly.
predict the
Yeah,
future
I get that.
accurately.
Well, and
But if I'm wrong, shoot me in the fucking head one day. Like, you know what I'm saying?
the thing is, like, this is why I brought up kind of the more metaphysical point of like, and it really relates to what we talked about earlier with kind of the Taoism thing, the passivity versus the asserting your will onto the earth. At the end of the day, like, there is a fate that we cannot control and will never control. That doesn't mean we just idly sit by and let whatever happen. We should put our will into the world and try to make it better and aim at something that we can achieve. But like, to me, there's a threshold. And if I'm seeing this threshold and now I'm justifying things like, I don't know, breeding camps, which again, I know you're not doing right now. I just think that
That would only be
will
very, very
follow.
extreme situations.
Right. Which
If it continues to be this extreme, yeah, it would have to. And by the way, people think I'm evil for suggesting that, but I guarantee you, if that event happens, I won't be the only one. I'll
No.
bow along with
Well,
God.
I genuinely think the fascists right now want that. Just and
They
not
do.
even
They
not even
absolutely do.
just
They
for
fucking hate women.
reproduction. They want it because
they hate
just
women in
yeah.
general.
Yeah, so it's not even just it's like a selfish thing, I think, for them. But
They view women as lesser than, below, and like, in my opinion, once again, I'll circle back to this: the fascists and the people who think like women belong in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant. Matriarchal societies do not have birth rate problems.
right.
But there's a reason.
Yeah, dude, we need to get you in the arena with one of these guys because you can just agree with them right off the bat about the birth rate thing and the abortion thing, and then you guys can fight about patriarchy. I would love to see that debate.
Dude, like, I'm not gonna lie, patriarchy works out well for me because in most matriarchal societies, warrior males were generally left to go hunt, fight, and fuck. That's all we had to do: hunt,
Yeah.
fight, fuck, and lead. Like,
Yeah.
lead for like hunting and war, and then we're good. Like, we get to lay back, let the women do the fucking work, raise the kids, play with them to go out. Like, it's great, man. Like, yeah, 30% of the male population dies, but I mean, like, on
Okay.
that deal, it's
Yeah.
not the worst trade-off, man. But I mean, like, obviously, I don't want that degree of extreme situation
Yeah.
in the real and the modern era. But like, come on, like,
Okay,
compared to like the feudal
I'm
Europe, it's not
have
that
to
bad.
go in like 20 minutes or so, and I
Oh,
really
me too.
want to get.
I'm technically.
Okay.
I'm off break right now, so I do need to get going.
Okay,
myself.
I really want to like complete this point that I'm trying to get at
Yeah, go
because
ahead. Oh, I'm so sorry, brother. I'm so sorry. You go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think it's a bit complex and it's hard to get out. But basically, when I brought up the universe having its own death that we can't control, right? Ultimately, like, I mean, there is a type of ending that we can't predict and that will probably happen outside of our control no matter how hard we fight it, is what I'm thinking, right? And
Or yeah, possibly.
if that's the case, then to me, that humbles me to the point of, well, we can do as much as we can, but there's a threshold because at the end of the day, all of this is like, if we all just disappear no matter what, billions of years from now, we're all done no matter what, that limits my threshold of what I'm willing to justify for the sake of preserving the human experience for as long as possible. Now, that doesn't mean again, I'm concerned about the birth rates. To me, that just means, okay, let's address this in the other types of ways that you're suggesting. If let's overthrow patriarchy, implement a more matriarchal, again, like better communities that operate with the earth better even, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a community problem. It's a consumerism problem. It's a capitalism problem to me. It's not a like giving women the free choice or not problem to me. And otherwise,
Yeah.
we're just going to have to ultimately force people to breed, which is just, I think it's a threshold I'm not willing to cross for something that, in terms of infinity, is a blip.
So, I mean, we can end it there, or I could have.
Yeah,
It's up to you.
yeah. Have the final word, please.
I think all that's reasonable. I disagree with you, but I don't think any of it's unreasonable. Um, I'll just leave it on. I very fundamentally internalized the concept of never going. Um, and because of this, I'm alive today. I'm alive today because of this. So I'm not going to lie, I have bias. But I'm very much of the opinion, do not go quietly into the dark night, like ever. Fight
Yeah.
tooth and nail to the end. That way, if a trillion years from now or whenever the universe ends, maybe another alien species pops into this universe and they find us and like, well, these motherfuckers went down swinging. Like, even if there's nobody to remember, the universe, it's time being what it is, we will be, our story will be there in some way. So I just want to go, never go quietly. That's my opinion. But
Yeah.
I don't see you as unreasonable. I think you're perfectly reasonable.
And I definitely understand your reasoning as well. Do you have to go now, or is there one more? Okay, sounds good.
Got
Well,
it out.
we'll
Dude, it
be
was great.
yeah, we'll be seeing you around the Discord, man.
Dude,
All right, take it easy.
take care.